Hello everyone, this is Zflex and welcome back to another A Producer's Approach video. In this video, we're going to be looking at Favright's song, Nerve. So if you haven't watched my videos in the past, I basically break down these videos into three separate sections. First, I have an intro backstory section. Second, I have a breakdown analysis section. And then lastly, I have an outro section. So Favright is an artist, personally for me, I've listened to since I discovered him on Funky Panda. And this was way before he was even on Monstercat. Back in the day when I discovered him, his song Second, I think, was either self-released or he released it on Tasty Music. So Favright's one of the few artists that came from the label Tasty Music. Artists like Fool, Favright, and I think one more artist came from there and hopped on to Monstercat. I think it was Let's Be Friends, but I can't really remember exactly. But Favright, I'd been a fan, and he was actually one of the artists I was hoping would one day appear on Monstercat. And when he finally did, I was so happy. And I think this was his first release on Monstercat, Nerve, back on the album 014. And I remember I was just so ecstatic because, like Nano B, he was one of the artists like I discovered right before they appeared on Monstercat. And then all of a sudden they appeared on Monstercat. I was like, oh my God, they made it. Like, it was really cool to see. So Nerve is definitely a older song from Favright, but it's a very catchy electro song, and it kind of plays into the same structure as a lot of electro songs of that time period. But like 7 Minutes Dead, there was his own kind of take and feel on electro complextro kind of music, and he made it kind of his own, kind of like Solaro, 7 Minutes Dead. All those guys made kind of like, there was the core element of what an electro song was, but they all added their own style and elements to that structure. So really interesting and cool to see. And Favright's been an artist I listened to for quite a while. I think he ended up not releasing on Monstercat anymore and ended up doing either self-releases or doing something else. So I do like to go listen to his music every once in a while, just kind of, having a nostalgia trip. And Nerve is probably my favorite song, I would say, from him. There are some other good songs like Ice Laden and Green Storm on the next album, where Act 3 is from, but Nerve is just like a special song. I don't know what it is about the song, but it's just super catchy. So anyways, I've been a fan of Favright since the Funky Panda days. The song Second is the first song I listened to by him, and that was way before it was on Monstercat. So anyways, let's get into this breakdown of Favright's song Nerve. Let's get into it. Okay, so to start off the song, pretty much in a traditional electro kind of progressive house structure with the kick intro, but it's a lot more interesting because it starts off with that whir, kind of like almost like a wub, but like a unique sound design sound. And then he has this funky bass playing along, like doom 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 wop. Like, it's a really catchy, like funky beat just to start right off the bat, which is really cool. And the kick is playing along with the open hi-hat, which you don't really hear very often, or a cymbal in the introduction of a song. Most of the time it's just like the kick itself, and then, or a kick and a clap, and then it just builds up with hi-hats later. But you don't really hear like a ride cymbal or a ride open cymbal just right off the bat within the intro of the song. So overall, just the introduction just in the first 15 seconds just is really funky, just like sets the tone for how funky, how groovy this song is going to be. And then within the section, he adds a piano on top of it just in the introduction. So he's adding a lot of sounds early on into this kind of more standard introduction for a lot of kick intros for a lot of these songs in this time period. So really interesting, and let's keep going. Okay, so within that intro section, you do hear the piano just play the root note of a chord. And what I forgot to mention, I don't know if I heard it previously in the beginning, but there is a clap playing on the second and fourth beat while the percussion is playing. So that is a really nice sound to give it a little more rhythm and variation right in the beginning. So it's interesting how much variation and groove right off the bat there is just to start off the song in a 30-second intro. So, anyways, let's keep going. Okay, so within this section, you hear the strings play, um, and then you hear this kind of sound on the. I want to say it's in the way background. It's like just playing a the root note, I think, in a higher timbre, and then you hear kind of the chord progression playing before the pluck comes in. The kind of funkier pluck comes in, and that section is pretty cool because it kind of sets the tone of what it's going to be in terms of like a calmness before the storm. I just kind of like when songs utilize string instruments as pads and bring that calm before the storm, and then slowly introducing this pluck back in. And then you do hear that sound in the background that was playing the root note that fades out when this pluck comes in, and you hear the strings a little bit more, setting the atmosphere and tone and the ambience for the song. So it's really interesting. I like how there's a more like a slower build kind of after the really kind of fast introduction of all the sounds right off the bat. Now it's kind of disassembling itself and then reassembling itself like a little bit in a slower fashion, just kind of slowly building up into what will become the drop. So really interesting. And let's keep going. Okay, so within this section, you hear the clap come in. So you hear it on every 2 and 4, which is pretty interesting. And then you do hear that kind of wub sound in the background on every other beat as well. And then it gives more emphasis on the piano within the section and the kind of funkier bass going doom 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 doom. So it's pretty interesting how there's a calm response within a lot of these sounds already, and we haven't even got into like the drop section where it has a lot more calm response happening within that section. So overall, just a really good section. And then the percussion, I think a hi-hat's included later on towards where we just stopped at now, where the clap and like a hi-hat's playing along, just giving it a little more variation and rhythm within the section. And then you do hear other kind of wubbish sounds, like you hear wow, 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 wow. Like you kind of hear a sound like that. I don't know if that's a synth or like a wub in a sense, but it's playing a sound in that nature. So anyways, let's continue. So I like how this build up, there wasn't really a indication it was building up. Some of the sounds did filter out a little bit going through a high pass filter. So the low end cut out, but there was just pretty much a white noise VFX kind of sweep into this section, and then kind of just drops right into the drop. So a very unique build up because it didn't really utilize a lot of kicks, snares, hi-hats, claps. It just kind of went straight into it pretty organically. So just wanted to point that out, and let's get into this drop section. Okay, so within this section, um, it's interesting. So it has a 4/4 rhythm, which is pretty standard for a lot of electro songs, but the wubs and the synth sounds are a little bit different. The sound initially sounds like a sound glitching, like no 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 no, and then boom 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 boom. It's kind of like a calm response between those two sounds, but they're not the traditional kind of smooth sounding synth sound. They're kind of, it's like two, like the initial sound is like a glitching almost glitching sound, almost like it's not like smooth. It like glitches and has accents to it. And then you have a wub, but the wub's not like the traditional dubstep wub where it has a lot more high end. This one almost sounds robotic, a little more robotic in a way where it almost sounds like an ARP. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but at the end of certain phrases, there is another synth that plays a more melodic and smoother synth that plays along like with the lead and follows a chord progression. So that's pretty interesting as well. That there's a lot of combination of sounds within this section, and there's a ton of call and response between those two sounds happening. One sound calls, the other one responds. So that section's really nice, and then it transitions to this section where it plays a more melodic section. So you hear the chord progression play with the sound, and then you'll hear a lead eventually come in within the section, still within the 4/4 rhythm. So, anyways, let's keep going. Okay, so that's the second part of the drop. Way more melodic. I do like the wubs accenting at the end of in the middle of measures, and then at the end of measures, it does acts as like an accent within that whole chord progression melodic break section. The lead gets introduced halfway through this section, but the one thing I really do like about this melodic section is towards the end of the measures, there's like an alternate harmonizing. So there's like another lead sound that plays, goes down, 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 and it harmonizes with the main melody and lead. That's probably my favorite part of this drop section. Just that harmonization there. I don't know why, but it just sounds so nice. And there is a different sound for the bass line. It sounds like a saw wave because it has a little more high end, but it has some kind of grit to it. So it sounds like a saw wave of some sorts playing. But overall, I really like the movement within this section, kind of with the growls on the bottom, because the melody in itself and the percussion could have had, enough flow, but I like the little added accents from the wubs on the bottom. It gives it way more movement and variation within the section, and then that harmonization towards the end of the couple measures, where you kind of hear the harmonization with the main lead, is really nice. Just a really nice touch. So anyways, let's get into this break section and continue. So just to start off this break section, you hear kind of a reverse cymbal um, to a cymbal kind of crash play, and then you hear the piano playing the root note, the piano chord, I should be more specific in saying, and then there is another sound in a higher pitch of a piano just playing one note, the root note, just in a higher pitch and frequency, which is interesting. It's a little bit lighter, but you do hear it playing along with the kind of chord being played as well on the piano, and then just with the pad strings as well a little bit. So a nice section here, and then you hear the kind of funkier pluck bass kind of come back into this section. So anyways, let's continue. Okay, so within this section, it's pretty interesting. I like how the piano is playing along with that funky kind of bass pluck. The piano chords phase out for that pluck sound, and then the strings are playing as a pad in the background. And the piano is playing the main melody lead, which is really nice because it just kind of has a sense of like there's enough space, but there's enough like a good balance of space and emptiness being fulfilled within the section because there's not too much going on. But you do focus a little bit more because there's not as many sounds being played like on the main melody of the piano or on the funky kind of bass or on the pad. So it just has enough sounds to fill the space, but there is still some emptiness to focus on some of the other sounds, which I find really interesting. And then the percussion comes in, and it sounds like a top kick. So it sounds like the top part of a kick, or like electronic kick. So because it's playing on every beat. So it sounds like a top kick came in to give some variation within the section, and then you do kind of hear another kind of synth being introduced within the section. So, anyways, let's continue. Okay, so that was the build up. Again, didn't really use much percussion to build up that section. What it really utilized was filtering, and then they had that one sound playing the root note, like that sound was playing, and then those sounds eventually faded out with a white noise type effect and sweep. Then there was a gap of space or a breath of air, and then it drops again. So again, I like this build up because there really isn't much percussion. It builds up organically. It's not like it came out of nowhere, that it built up, and it's unique to the time period of a lot of electro songs, highly utilizing structured build ups, much as progressive house and house music as well. A lot of artists were using very structured build ups. So this is different for this time period of 2013, that's for sure. So, anyways, let's get into the second drop in chorus. Okay, so ideally, the first part of the second drop or chorus is pretty similar in terms of structure to the first part of the first drop in chorus. What I was listening for this time was different sounds that I missed last time, and halfway through this first drop, there is a nice kind of uplifting and downlifting white noise sound, kind of a nice VFX sound, and that the kick is the only one playing. Then the kind of clapper, snare, and hi-hats come in halfway through this first drop, which again, I didn't realize. I thought a lot of songs threw in the percussion kind of right off the bat in the second drop, but I'm finding some of these songs did not do that. They just do the kind of the same structure again, having just the kick play and then adding in the snare or kick, not kick, but snare, clap, or hi-hat halfway through that section again. So it's interesting how they do that and add variation within that section, even though they're using like a similar structure to the beginning. But overall, pretty much the same in terms of structure, sound design, calm response with all the same similar sounds. And I think this more melodic section is pretty similar to the second part of the first drop as well. So we'll continue now. Okay, so that was the second drop. The second part of the second drop. Pretty similar melodically, structure wise, too. Very similar to the first drop, second part of that first drop. So, pretty much similar in terms of structure. And I was trying to notice any different sounds within the section. One thing I did notice is there is some static. I don't know if that's coming from like a saw wave or if that's an added type of noise, I guess, maybe incorporated with the sound to give it some flow. But I did notice some static, which I thought I heard in the last, in the first drop in the second section as well. But I thought it was a saw wave, so not exactly sure about that. But I do like how the bass line and the wubs are very kind of robotic sounding, but they're kind of like the lower pitch robotic sounding kind of wubs, which I like quite a bit. They add a lot of variety and just the tonally kind of makes it a little bit heavier, the song. So overall, just a really funky, catchy song. And this outro is pretty similar to a traditional electro outro. So you kind of hear what was kind of being introduced in the beginning, kind of in reverse flipped with the piano and then the funky plucks playing out. So with the kick and the snare clap and the hi-hat. So anyways, we'll listen to the outro and talk about the song after. Okay, so that's Favright's song Nerve. The outro is pretty similar to what I previously just said. Um, it just kind of fades out a lot of the sounds and then slowly just kind of digresses into just a kick and having that kind of wub sound, not having that funky bass sound as much as well, just kind of, eventually fading out with all the different sounds and percussion just to outro the song. So overall, this is Favright's song Nerve, and this song is just super catchy. The melody is just insane. And that second drop, and the second part of the drops, like that melodic section, I love a lot. But I do like the main, like first part of the drop with that sound design. It's so unique. I've not heard any other song still do that. And I really like how right off the bat, this song kind of introduces like a really funky rhythm. I really do like that pluck bass on the bottom, like doom 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 doom. Like that is probably what got me hooked on this song because it's just so funky, so groovy. Like you could just tell like the energy right off the bat when the song starts. And I like how Favright did that right from the get go, had that wub and then just started right off the bat. So it's not like a really kind of boring kind of kick snare intro with maybe one sound playing. Like it's just a really funky rhythm leading into the song, and then it just builds up from there. And I like how this song organically builds as well. There isn't a clear, definitive percussive buildup. It's just utilizing filtering and just the sounds being used within this section. So overall, just a really good use of structure within the song. Really great sound design. Favright's really good with that, and just a really great funky rhythm. Um, that's kind of what hooks me the most on the song, and that melodic section, really good harmonizing lead within those sections, and just the great use of the wubs as well within that section to make it more interesting within that melodic section. So overall, if you haven't checked out Favright's other music, I highly recommend it. Really good artist, really good discography, whether it be on Monstercat or on Tasty Music. Or just off Monstercat, or Tasty in general, just like self releases. Favright is just really good. So, anyways, I hope you like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next A Producer's Approach video. All right, everyone, have a good one. Peace.